You might have to accept it.
Ready to go. We're recording.
All right, here we are, folks, on the Adrian Bo podcast, episode 117, and we've gone back to the interview process. Troy, Malcolm and I come to you every week without fail with our skills workshop series, but in between, sporadically, I'm going to come to you with some special guests, and today we've got none other than Jack Henderson from Henderson Advocacy, buyer's agent. Jacko, how you doing, buddy?
Good, mate. Very, very good. Sitting here in Bronte looking at the ocean. So it's first world problems, huh?
Beautiful. Is that you working from home, are you?
Mate, I just come home to do the podcast. It's a bit of a madhouse in the office. So
yeah. Gotcha. So where's your office located for those who don't know?
Mate, head office is Paddington in Sydney's east. And then I've got another office in Newcastle as well. So we've got the two.
Right, fantastic. So, mate, for those who don't know, and, myself included, because we know of each other, we've done a couple of deals together, we've spoken a few times, but we've really never had a great opportunity to get to know each other more intimately. So today's podcast is a great opportunity to do that. I certainly enjoyed the recent experience we had when one of your clients bought one of my properties. It was seamless, it was smooth, it was transparent. So that's certainly a great indication about the way you operate. So I really commend you on that. So, mate, how long's Henderson Advocacy been going for?
Mate, not as long as people think. So my background's actually construction and mining. I got booted out of school when I was 15, so I got expelled. Obviously, when you're 15, you don't have a license and you don't have many career prospects. And Dad runs quite a large construction business in Sydney. So I went and worked there for 5 or 6 years, met a girl in Newcastle. As you do for love, mate, you relocate. So I relocated to Newcastle, spent a few years in the mines up there. And then as I was doing that, I built my own portfolio. So I was a super passionate investor, bought 3 or 4 properties while I was on a salary. And then I got some media coverage. I was in magazines. I was doing podcasts like this. I was trying to build brand as much as I could anywhere I could. And I'm a huge listener and fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, who I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
So, mate, just sort of following his playbook. And then from there, it was sort of a natural progression. People were asking me how I was doing it and how they can get into it, what they should be doing. And I thought, well, fuck, I'm sick of giving people advice for free. I may as well charge for it. And I'd much rather be, wearing a T-shirt and hanging by the beach than putting a set of fluoros on and going into a mine. So, mate, I started with another firm in Sydney, spent 9 months there. Within the first 6 months, I was their highest writer, and that was including doing more business than the director of the business. Mate, got the sack from that business because of a few different reasons, and then sort of set up my own thing in October of last year. By January, the office fit out was done and Henderson Advocacy was born. So it's been what now, 10 and a half, 11 months.
Yeah, well, you're right in that that's a lot shorter than what most people think, given the prolific marketing and exposure and the momentum that you've managed to maintain and also generate. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, mate.
What would you put that down to? Because, look, whether our listeners are agents, buyers agents, property managers, BDMs, business owners, obviously they're all always looking for the secret sauce. Now, you and I know there's not one specific secret sauce. It's doing multiple things consistently really, really well. But if you had to put it down to a handful of things to get this sort of traction that you have managed to generate within a relatively short period of time, what would you say?
Mates, I think the best thing about, and you would know better than anyone, the eastern suburbs is quite a cliquey place. And I feel like growing up here, like most people do, most agents have grown up in the east, I feel like it's actually a disadvantage to them. And the reason for that is because I care so much about what other people think. It's what school did you go to? Who do you know? Or you can't do that because it'll impact that person. And there's so much of that bullshit that goes on. It's not just the east, it's the world in general. Mate, I grew up in Western Sydney, and we were just chatting, prior to coming online, out here where Josh Teslam works. I grew up in a place called Wilberforce, which is the other side of Windsor. And, mate, it's a very, very, very different world out there, and you grow up very differently. So I come to the eastern suburbs because this is where all the money is. This is where I wanted to be, and my aspiration sort of led me here. But ever since I've started in the industry, I haven't really given a fuck about what people think about me. You know, I've always been authentically myself. I've always had the purple cow mentality. I've always wanted to stand out from everyone else. And that's sort of where the flamingo thing come from, which was, you know, standing out from the crowd. And regardless if someone likes you or hates you, it's just about who knows you. That's the most important thing. So for me, you know, I hired staff from the day that I started in the industry because I had quite a bit of capital to back me from my portfolio and the cash that I earned. So my first hire was a videographer. Again, a bloke that was in, you know, the aircraft maintenance engineer. That was his job. Had no idea how to do anything with a camera, but he wanted a new start. And I said, mate, here's a video camera. Walk around and film me. So, you know, from day dot, I was essentially a guy who knew no one in the eastern suburbs. I started here in a no birds hire car because I sold my ute when I come out of the mines, and I just had this dude follow me around with a camera. So, you know, from day dot, people were like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And then from there, mate, it just sort of, you know, I guess it grew. I hired some prospectors and, you know, I started podcasts and, you know, just, I guess from sheer not really knowing what I was doing, I just started reaching out to heaps of different people, and I got some pretty cool guests, like people like Tom Waterhouse and I don't even know now, but like pretty big names, pretty big profiles. And then, mate, it was just a big momentum thing. But I think the biggest thing is, you know, the brand is like just putting yourself out there, being on socials, being connected to the right people, or building relationships with the right people. And then, you know, it all sort of snowballs, like you said, that momentum is something that is pretty incredible.
Yeah, so just to give people a bit of a snapshot, let's call it 12 months or so that you've been, you know, running and operating your business. Give us an idea of the number of transactions or total sales volume, or any metric that we could go by, if that's okay.
For sure. So since January this year, I've done 99 deals personally. So I'm one off 100. As soon as I hit 100, mate, I'm finished for the year. It's just over 3 mil GCI personally, and then the other people inside of the firm have committed another 2. So we'll do just over 5 for the year, for the calendar year. That's myself, 5 media guys, which do all of our in-house social media and posting and all that shit. And then I've got 3 other active buyers agents, and then the other people inside of my team are all support staff, so taking clients to open for inspections and you know, sourcing property, prospecting new business, and all the rest of it. So I guess high level, 100 deals, 3 mil GCI personal, 5 mil for the business for the year within sort of 12 months. Impressive.
And obviously, there's a lot of talk in the industry in terms of the seller's agent point of view with EBUs and structure and roles. And everyone's staying in their lane, etc. But when we look on the other side, say in your business as a buyer's agent, for the lack of a better term, what's your immediate EBU look like?
So this year it's evolved. So I started the year there was 3 of us in the business. That was it. And then over the course of the 11 months we've been in operation, the team has obviously grown. Not one person inside of my business has had prior real estate experience. Every single person's come from a different industry, whether I've got Damien who, has owned and operated pizza franchises that he sort of built and then sold. I've got guys from the UK who come over here and they were picking fucking, vegetables at farms and, I just like people for people. And again, I think that's something that's a little bit different about us. Like, if a client goes and meets 3 or 4 buyers agents, just like they would with real estate agents, I'd go and meet 3 or 4 agents. We're very different to our competition. We're not suit and tie. We're not, a Scots boy or whatever it is. Like we're just human beings. And I think that lacks with a lot of real estate, right? Like people, and I don't know why, but it's just generally been all the way through the industry that it's a suit and tie thing. You're representing, houses and they're expensive items and you present well. But we've always been a little bit contrarian to that. And I think, again, standing out has helped. So my EBU as it stands right now is there's 4 of us. Going into 2022, there'll be an EBU of 5, and that won't change throughout the year. It'll just be 5 people from the get-go. So I've got 4 people. I've got myself. I've got Lewis, who does all of my outbound prospecting. I've got Daniel, who's sort of my right-hand man, who, goes around to the properties with clients and all the rest of it because I can't be everywhere at once. And then I've got Matt, who is my guy in Newcastle, who does all the on-the-ground stuff up in Newcastle. And essentially what I do is, on the phone client management and then negotiating when it gets to that point in time. And then all the other guys, are associates or buyers agents that we're training up from sort of scratch.
Okay. So in your space, obviously you're hyper dollar productive because you're either in front of buyers that want to make decisions, or you're on the phone with buyers wanting to make decisions. Lewis's role fascinates me. You're talking about outgoing prospecting from a buyer's agent perspective. So what would a typical day look like for him, for example?
So because of all the social stuff that we do and the way that we generate leads, like whether they're cold or whether they're warm, we've got quite a few leads that need to be called and nurtured. And just the same as a real estate agent, obviously, you've got, vendors that you're cold calling. Something I do every week is I make sure that I get every single property that's sold in the areas that we buy. I then match those addresses with RP data and scrape all the phone numbers from RP data. And that can give us, somewhere between 300 to 700 properties a week that we then outbound prospect to those people, because if they've sold, they're generally buyers, or they may have already bought. So we just try and find as many people that we can prospect as possible. So mate, he's constantly outbound. He then sets appointments for me. We qualify those buyers pretty hard before I spend an hour sitting in front of them, and then obviously pitch on the business just like you guys would go in and do a listing appraisal. So it's essentially just outbound lead gen. And the reason that I believe that there hasn't been a Ray White or a McGrath or a Century 21 or one of those big brands in the buyer's agency space is because with a buyer's agent or a buyer's advocate, there's a general lack of leads, right? You've got the front runner of most businesses. They're really good at generating business. That they do, probably somewhere between 1 to 5 mil GCI. I would say that's probably one of the best buyers agents do in Australia. But not everyone is them. So if they're not generating the leads, then the other agents inside of the business might go meet a mortgage broker or fucking whatever they may do and generate 1 or 2 leads a week here or there. Where with a real estate agent, you're selling property, you're then meeting somewhere between 20 and 200 buyers on a campaign, and that's all new business. You can then tell the street about all the properties you've sold.
Lost your audio. Yeah,
the model that we're creating.
Yeah, I just lost your audio for a sec, but I think you're back on now.
We're back. So the model we're creating with our buyers agency, which I won't go too much into because it's sort of our secret sauce, is we need to be able to get access to leads in any marketplace where you don't necessarily need an amazing front runner. They can just be like the McDonald's analogy is what is it? Everyday people, extraordinary systems and processes. So we can get access to buyers and access to leads in any marketplace, and it's a very scalable model, which you guys will see roll out next year. We'll have offices in all the major capital cities on the East Coast, and then satellite offices inside of those.
Okay. So that's some pretty big plans that you've got there, Jacko, by the sounds of it. I mean, what's the recruitment strategy for that? Is it, again, getting people that are sort of out of the industry altogether and repurposing them and retraining them? Is that the strategy?
Yeah, and because buyer's agency isn't a thing where there's tens of thousands of them around, right? There's probably somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 buyer's agents around Australia. That's growing very, very rapidly. One of my coaches and an alliance that we have is with Ben Handler, who's a part of the Buyer's Agent Institute, who did my training. And we've got essentially a recruitment alliance with those guys. So people go through the Buyer's Agent Institute, they get trained, they get Ben support. And then essentially we can handpick the superstars out of that who don't want to go out and do their own thing. They want the support, they want the training, they want the systems, they want the lead flow and all of the things that you get from working under a banner. And then we'll brand them Henderson and essentially start satellite offices.
Fantastic. Hey, so that's really interesting about how you get leads, because you're right. An agent has the benefit of door knocking, cold calling, email inquiries from current listings, social media. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but you're quite limited. What you're saying is you track people that have sold and then target, or Lewis is targeting them and saying, well, and are you now looking to buy? And then obviously you've got your social media. So there's a couple of verticals, but there's not 15 of them. So there's obviously a lot of labour intensity that goes into it, and a lot of calls that have got to be made, right? From Lewis's point of view, is there any other way to generate leads? Like, I know you don't want to give everything away, but just generally speaking in the industry, that apart from referrals that people rely on?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably ways that are not above board. I would say that a lot of buyers agents have relied on in the past with getting OFI books and all the rest of it.
Right.
It's a pretty well-known thing in the industry.
Right.
Again, that's not a scalable model either, because if there is a buyer's agent out there that's getting OFI books or whatever it is, that may work for that one relationship with a real estate agent, whatever it is. But you try and scale that Australia-wide, and I don't think that's going to work for a lot of people.
Right.
But, as you start to do more and more transactions, more and more real estate agents, like you said earlier, know how you operate. So as they've got vendors that, may need to buy before they sell, they start referring to you. And then you get past client referrals. And then, I do a lot of online marketing that isn't just from Jack Henderson. There's a lot of other websites you can be a part of that backlinks to, and SEO and all the rest of it. So it's just being creative, right? And I think, again, with buyers agents in the past, where they've been limited to is their core market, right? Like, you might buy in, say, 10 suburbs, and when that quiets down, your business generally slows. So you need to be diversified, I feel like, across many markets. So now we've got a team of sort of 25. If I'm not buying a property in the eastern suburbs, I might be buying one in the inner west or the lower north shore. We've got the team on the central coast in Newcastle. There was always a transaction getting done. There's always someone finding out about who we are and how we operate. And again, it takes time. Like, nothing good comes easy, and we're riding the wave of a pretty strong marketplace. I'm not naive to that.
Yeah. I have noticed on your social media that even though you're saying you're located in the east, but I see you pop up and sold properties, quite far away from that immediate radius. Has that just happened organically? Was it strategic, or referrals, or how's that come about?
It was strategic from, I guess, the get-go, because I've lived, I guess, between the western suburbs, the east, Newcastle. I've got, I guess, connections in all of those areas. Yeah. And again, like, there's probably the most amount of buyers agents in a, I guess, one core area in the east, right? The east is probably where they're most prominent. And I don't want to compete with all these other buyers agents, right? Like, again, I think that's more of an ego thing to say I did the most transactions in the east. Like, I just want to do the most transactions, make the most amount of money, so I can diversify that into other areas. Yeah. So, I mean, if we can get business in, the inner west, or in the North Shore, or in the western suburbs, or in the Central Coast, or in Newcastle, like, that all works. And every single client that you service knows more and more people. And because it isn't a saturated market as such, when someone goes, "Oh, how'd you buy that property?" or, you bought that really well, how'd you do it? They don't have a lot of people to say, "Oh, well, you can go and see these 10 other buyers agents." Like, "Oh, we use these guys." So a lot of the time we're competing uncontested. We pitch on business. This is our fee. If you don't like it, great. If you do like it, let's get started. Yep.
And on the fee side of things, if you don't mind sharing, what are you averaging, or what's your what do you have a standard fee that's not negotiable, or is it similar to agents where it's you're flexible between, say, 1.5 to 2%? Can you give us a bit of an idea there?
Yeah, so sub 800 grand is pretty straightforward. It's 15,000 flat fee plus GST. Just makes it plain and simple. Anything above 800 to 2% plus GST. And then what I've found, and I don't really like it, to be very honest, our sweet spot, I feel, is somewhere between 1.5 and 5 million. The clientele are more abundant in that price range. It's usually a lot more buyers and sellers in that area, especially in the east. And the fees remain much stronger. As I've found, to buy properties above that $5 million mark, the competitors that I work with, generally do lower fees, and I've got nothing against that. That's totally fine. But then obviously, if someone's got a lot more experience than you in an area, they've probably got more of a track record, they're charging X, you charging Y doesn't really work. So then you have to come down. So you start doing things at 1.5%. And again, you're competing with other people. So I think I've worked out where my sweet spot of the market is, the people that I resonate most with, and where there's the most amount of scale. And that's where I'll remain. So, like, buying things of 10 and 15 and 20, $30 million, like, that doesn't interest me. I don't want to pitch on that business. I don't want to compete in that price bracket. I think somewhere between that, 1.5 to 5 is an area that, we're starting to dominate.
Okay, fantastic. Now, given you've actually never been a real estate agent, and the fact that you've come from, say, mining, which fueled property investment, and now being a buyer's advocate, I think that it positions you really well to answer this question, which will help a lot of our listeners, Jacko, which is, given you've personally been involved in buying 100 properties this year on behalf of clients, and given that you've bought properties yourself for you personally, what's been your observation of agents generally in a few areas that they could dramatically improve upon immediately in order to raise the bar of the industry in general, so the clients and all stakeholders of the transaction benefit from it?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. To be very honest, I've had very good dealings with agents, like very few agents that I could say, like, I fucking did not enjoy dealing with that person. Most of them have been really, really good. Of course, a lot of people don't see eye to eye, and that's personality clashes and all the rest of it. Look, one of the things that I hear constantly is buyers are super frustrated with low guide prices. Now, I completely respect the reason agents do it. It's to get more heads indoors, to get more inquiry, which creates more competition. But 99% of the buyer pool out there in the marketplace are uneducated people, like uneducated in that segment of the market. They may be educated in whatever they're experts in, but in property, they don't know. So, people spend a lot of money and a lot of time and they get involved in a property that they never actually had the capacity to buy. It was just an agent trying to create competition. So I think if there was a way to be able to create a more transparent pricing structure for buyers, but still do what they need to do, which is create competition to get the best possible price for their vendor, I think is something that I think could improve on. And from all the people that I've dealt with, one of the agents that does this the best, I feel, is Alex Phillips. Like, he's super, super upfront with people. He goes, if you haven't got, whatever his guide is, it might be, say, $4 million, and let's say the property's worth 4.8 to 5. If someone asks him where's this going to end up, from my experience, he'll say, if you haven't got 4.8, don't worry about it. So he might get them in the door and get the numbers, but I guess it's just a transparency piece around where it's likely to end up. Because, if someone just paints every agent with the brush that, we'll just add 20% to a guide price, there's a lot of buyers that don't turn up to properties where agents might guide them more accurately, and then they sell for within their price bracket and they go, fuck, why didn't I go for that? But it's just because they've, sort of learned from the market that things might be, say, 20% underguided. So if anything is, say, guiding $1 million and we've only got a 1.1 budget, if anything's guiding $1 million, we won't show up to that open for inspection. But mate, I guess not everyone's going to be happy. An agent's never going to be able to please every buyer out there. They're never going to be able to please every single vendor out there. They can do their best possible, work to be able to make sure everyone remains happy, to make sure everyone's kept up in a loop. But, it's an emotional thing, buying property. If someone misses out on a property, regardless if the agent was at fault or not, people are still going to have. They've missed out. But mate, honestly, I haven't had many negative experiences with real estate agents. It's an interesting observation about pricing, obviously, because you're a proxy to the buyers, and the buyers are the ones that are frustrated. And I suppose from the other side, from an agent side, it's like, well, the market this year has been a moving target. Like, we've listed it, and by the time it ends up being sold, the price is different. And the buyers are the ones that are responsible for making it different to a degree, in that they're competing so aggressively for it. But look, when you look at the auction process, it's still probably the most efficient and effective way to sell. But I agree with you. If there was a better way to educate buyers around preparing them better, then waving a magic wand, there's no doubt that would be ideal. But in saying that, it's not a coincidence that your industry is a burgeoning, fastly growing industry, and that might be one of the reasons why. So I suppose it's true. It's 100% true. Buyers come to buyers agents, generally speaking, because they're in pain. Because they've missed out on properties, they don't have great relationships, they haven't got a heap of time, they want access to more stock, they want to buy a property because they've been looking too long. And all of the, a lot of those reasons relate around them not understanding the marketplace and, some of the tactics that agents use, which then, play into what we do and how we get remunerated. For a live example, like I made an offer on a property the other day of 9.5 million in Vaucluse. The guide 7.8. We made an offer unconditional at 9.5, signed on a contract. It wasn't accepted. My client then got her dad to make an inquiry on that property 2 days later, and it said the interest is still at 7.8. And then they showed up on an open for inspection and heard the agent saying it's still at 7.8. So, that's nothing on me. What they do is fine, but then, obviously the buyers get the shits with that. And that's not every agent. And I don't like painting agents with the same brush because they're not the same whatsoever. But things like that. So I guess it's ethics to an extent. But it's with every industry, mate. You know that. Sure.
And tell me, what's your attitude with competition? Do you have an abundance or a scarcity attitude? Like you look at your market, it's becoming really competitive. Obviously, you got Simon Cohen, you got the Goldman brothers that have just swapped over from agency into buyer's agency. You got Trelease. I'm just naming a few, but there's a whole bunch. Do you have good relationships with all these people? Do you think there's enough business out there for everyone?
Mate, my mindset's more than abundant. Like my end goal is not buyer's agency, and I made that pretty clear to a lot of people. Like I'm in the industry to make a lot of money, to help a lot of clients buy property, but my end goal is much larger than one segment of the marketplace here in eastern suburbs. I wouldn't be best friends with all my competition. Like, do I agree with them as human beings? And do we have the same, I guess, viewpoints? Probably not. Would I have a beer with them at the pub? Probably not. But I don't have any, I don't have any bad blood and all the rest of it. Their clientele is not my clientele. Like the people that they look after, I probably would never look after. And that's because we're completely different people. And I think that's what you need to understand. Like, Seth Godin talks about, understanding your people and he has a saying that people like me do things like this or something similar to that nature. And that's what you need to understand. Like there's more than enough business out there for everyone. 2 years ago, I wasn't in the industry. Everyone was doing super well. 2 years later, I am in the industry. I've done 100 transactions here and I haven't taken anything from anyone else and no one's taken anything from me. So, there's more than enough for everyone. But look, I take the piss out of a lot of them. Like I do those signboards and that's always having a cheeky dig here and there. And again, that's more of a getting people talking thing and making sure people know my name and strategic more than anything, right? Like I judge how well a post does not by how many likes it gets, but by how many people send it to other people. So on Instagram you can see your metrics on how many times it's been sent around. I like doing that stuff because the more and more people that send around a post, regardless if that person then follows you or not, is a win in my eyes. Being polarizing.
Yeah. So do you feel like you're a bit of an outsider from the establishment? Obviously, there's that core establishment of those eastern suburbs buyers agents. I know you've got a broader geographical forecast, but for the time being, do you see yourself as a bit of an outsider from that establishment of core buyers agents?
For sure. And I like it too. Like I don't like, I've always been like that in life. I've never fit in with, I guess the status quo. But I think by being that way, it works. Like, you look at people like Josh Tesla. Josh Tesla does not fit the status quo of Quakers Hill, right? Like he stands out and he does exceptionally well because of it. Someone like Alex Phillips, again, he stands out. He does exceptionally well because of it. Richard Branson on a very different level, is very different to the status quo and he's created an exceptional business because of it. And they're very good with marketing and they leverage that. So, again, it needs to be authentic to you. Like this is just who I am as a person. And I remove my life from my business. So I work with a lot of real estate agents, we're very good work friends, but my life outside of real estate does not revolve around real estate agents. And I think that's the thing, something that I've noticed from the outside looking in is, like I said, it's a very cliquey place. So like everyone works together, everyone plays together, everyone, knows everyone that everyone knows. Which then I think holds people back from their capacity and their capability because they're always thinking in the back of their head, well, what would that person think if I post this? What would they think? And if I do this, with me, like what people think of me good or bad doesn't matter to me, because I've got a life outside of, you know, what I do to make a living. And that's something Jeff Jowett helps me with, who I think you know.
Yes.
You know, I get weekly coaching with Jeff, and that's what it's all about. It's you know, creating a business that is not your identity, that's not your life. That business then helps you, you know, build the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's super important. But I guess short answer to your question is, yeah, absolutely. I feel like an outlier, and I use it to my advantage.
Yeah. No, I mean, as you know, Jeff and I are quite close, and you know, I like the fact that he explains the dichotomy between work and your real life, and the way I see it is that you know, real estate's a game, and if you get good at the game, your life benefits from it, and your life is really your health, your spirituality, family, your spouse, and that type of thing. So it's interesting how he can, you know, articulate that and help you guide through that. And he's not a real estate expert. He's more of a headspace expert, and more of someone who can actually guide you through the adversity he's been through in his past, where you can benefit. So sort of putting an older head on a younger set of shoulders, so you can be the beneficiary from a lot of mistakes, which he'll openly tell you that he's made, you know. So it's interesting, and that's great that you're getting some guidance from Jeffro. He's a good man.
Yeah, and I think just on that, like that's again something that I think is super important as well. Like, if people want to just be real estate practitioners and that's it, that's totally fine. But my mindset is not I'm a buyer's agent. Like, my mindset is I'm a business owner. Like, I'm creating a business. I'm creating, you know, a development company. I've got a portfolio, and real estate is just one segment of that. And you know, I think surrounding yourself with people that, you know, have been there and done it. And that's why I love Jeff. He's been to the highest of highs, and he's been to the lowest of lows. And when he talks to you, he talks to you from experience. And I think with young people, and I'm speaking from my own experiences, when you come into more and more money, and you know, ego can get the better of you. I'm 100% guilty of that. You know, money gives you options and opportunities that you wouldn't have if you didn't have money. And real estate's an incredible place to make. You know, you can't, from a revenue perspective, compare it to something like tech, but from a profit margin perspective, it's a very profitable business. And when you have money, you have choices, and with choices can come good options and bad options. And, you know, I fell into last year the downside of money. Like, it got the better of me. I made a lot of silly decisions with partying and drinking and all the other stuff that comes with it. And I think it was just being self-aware enough to pull myself out of that. And I reckon I spend, you know, this year probably 200 grand-ish on coaches, between Jeff and Simon Reynolds and Ben Handler and Mark Kentwell, and then, you know, all the other conferences and events I go to. And I just joined a thing called the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global organization of entrepreneurs, and some of the biggest business owners in the world are a part of it. And I think surrounding yourself with the mentality and getting the perspective of so many different industries to then implement, if real estate's your thing, to implement that into real estate. And it gives you a lot of, you know, knowledge, because when you're talking with clients, you know, a lot of the time you're not talking about real estate, you're talking about life. So if you're well versed in a lot of different areas, I think it can only benefit you without a doubt.
Definitely. Yeah, well, look, there's definitely a lot of gold nuggets in that for the listeners, Jacko, in terms of investing in yourself. I mean, Warren Buffett, you know, has been asked on multiple occasions, what's the best investment you've ever made? You know, given that he's made so many incredible investments. And ad nauseum, he keeps saying, in education, you know, reading, learning, studying. So, you know, if you want to be elite in anything, whether it's sport, business, buyer's agency, real estate agent, get a coach. I mean, there's me, there's plenty of others out there. And good for you for making that investment into yourself. And obviously success leaves clues. So well done. You talked about Seth Godin. Obviously, I've read a lot of his books, Purple Cow. So that's a metaphor, really. And you've taken it more to the flamingo, you know, and dressing up and sort of having that as your avatar, if you like. Has that been really like a novelty? And also, has it just helped you set you apart and helped you mitigate just being part of the status quo?
Yeah, I mean, look, it started off as a novelty. I was in Europe on the piss. I had a big flamingo hat, and it just came with me from there. But the more and more strategic I got about it, the more and more I use it to my advantage, you know. So most property people have a book on investment and how I've done this, you know. So I took it and flipped it on its head, and I was like, majority of my clients are young families. Young families have kids. So I wrote a book, but it was a book on you know, Henderingo, which is the character. He's a flamingo, helps a family of lions buy a property in the jungle. So, you know, instead of being, you know, bashing your chest how good I am, it's now a gift and a lead generation tool that I can leverage off. My idea with Henderson Advocacy and the Flamingo is, if I look at a company like Red Bull, for example, Red Bull sells energy drinks. That's it. They've got one product, and they're one of the biggest businesses in the world. But the reason Red Bull are so successful is because they've got so much vertical integration into other industries, and they're more of an experience business. So, you know, you'll go to an action sports event and there'll be Red Bull things everywhere and cars, and you're giving out Red Bull things,
sports and things.
Yeah. And then you go to a festival and there's Red Bull. So they're very smart with activation marketing. So next year, when all of this shit goes away, you know, the idea with Henderson Advocacy is we'll just be a business that happens to work in the real estate space. Henderson as a brand will grow into different sectors, but you know, I want to be a business that's known for experience. And with the Flamingo, that's essentially going to be our mascot. And, you know, we're going to have a car that, you know, a DJ pops out the back of, and we can just pull up at Bondi Beach, start DJing, giving out free things. And again, it's got nothing to do with real estate, but it's brand and it's experience building. So that was the idea with that. But again, it was just happened by chance. And then from there, it's just sort of grown. And again, a lot of people think I'm a fucking idiot and look at who is this bloke? You can't take him seriously. But you know, I believe in the philosophy that more and more people talk about you, the better, regardless if it's good or bad.
Yeah. How old are you, Jacko?
25, mate.
Yeah, I'll take my hat off to you, mate. You're half my age, and you certainly got great energy about you. You've certainly got great foresight and some big plans ahead of you. And I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better just on this podcast. Obviously, you know, as I said, one of your clients bought through me, and we've had, you know, some limited dealings, but I've really enjoyed getting to know you. As we start to wrap up, I ask all my guests 4 questions. One of them is, what's one of the better decisions you've made either in life or in business?
Yeah. Mate, something I'm pretty vocal about and have been this year, especially through socials, is giving up the piss. Like, that was probably one of the biggest things and the biggest advantages I've had this year, is that, you know, instead of operating at, you know, 80% and then 60% and then 30% and then 80% and you know, having that staggered approach because of the ups and downs you get from drinking alcohol and partying, as most people do as a young person. You know, not boozing this year is it's just, you know, I've just worked at, you know, I'd say 80% of my capacity the whole year. Sure, some days are better than others, but you know, I may not be the most intelligent, I may not have the best connections, I may not know the best people, but if you're consistently working day in, day out, and you don't have good days and bad days, mate, momentum just builds, and it's definitely helped me without a doubt.
Good. So you think it helps you not just with work, but in all aspects of your life, because you're just not having that sort of, I mean, I know it's typical to say hangover, but it's really lack of energy, lack of clarity, lack of focus, lack of drive.
You make poor decisions, you spend stupid money, you know. I know as soon as I got on the piss, all the bad decisions made, you know, there wasn't too much good that come from it. So, mate, it just helped in every aspect of my life. My relationship with my girlfriend is so much better.
Right.
My relationship with myself is so much better. And I'm the fittest I've ever been, you know. I couldn't run 2Ks at the start of the year, and you know, now I'm about to do my second marathon next week, which is
good on you.
It's just awesome. Yeah,
there's not many 25-year-olds that would have the courage to actually give up alcohol, given the peer group pressure at your age group. So good for you. I'll take my hat off to you. Second question: what's one of the worst decisions you've made either in business or in life?
Mate, that's a very good question. You know, look, I've said some stuff I probably shouldn't have said.
Right.
I've you know, I don't know, spent some money on shit that I shouldn't have spent money on. Look, I don't look at my life with regret in anything I've done. You know, I've had girlfriends in the past that I shouldn't have done things that I did either. Like, it's all life building, it's all learning, right? So, there isn't one thing that I go, fuck, I shouldn't have done that.
Because they're just outcomes, right, which lead to the next outcome. But at the time, they might have seemed like a bad decision, but again, it's just one outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get caught up in, especially in real estate. You make a wrong decision with a client or something like that, and you beat yourself up. But, as long as you don't do it again and you learn from it, then it's life. No one knows everything when they get started.
Yeah, exactly. Mate, the third one is just a piece of advice or a quote that you either read or heard or someone even might have told you directly that helped you in life.
Mate, Chris Gray, I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he was my mentor with property.
Well. Yep.
Still a very, very close friend. And it wasn't a specific bit of information that he said or a specific one-liner, but real estate's an industry, especially in the eastern suburbs. I'm not sure if it's like this anywhere else, but it's very easy to get caught up in the flashiness of life. The watches, the suits, the fucking holidays, and all the rest of it. And it's a lumpy place, right? Some years you'll make lots of money. Next year the market might not be as good, and you're living on baked beans and 2-minute noodles. One thing that is I'm extremely grateful for is I've always put my money. I have a nice car and I live in a nice apartment, but I've always put the majority of my money that I make into investments, whether it's myself or whether it's property, and that's allowed me flexibility and not to worry. Like I've got, I think, just over 16 million in property now, and that's grown substantially over the last 12 months with buying 2 offices and stuff like that. But if that grows at 10% a year, give or take 7 to 10% a year for the next 30 years, mate, I never have to worry about money for the rest of my life. And that's just because I've been strict for the last 7 or 8 years to just put my money into that. And real estate agents are people who are very lucky, like we said, who make a lot of money. And I think that just that slight bit of discipline and not, falling into the peer pressure of going and spending 50 grand on a watch or 100 grand on a holiday, and actually using that money for yourself, because, mate, at the end of the day, when you're laying in the grave or you're an old bloke and all the glitz and glam's gone, like, you're the only one that's left with that shit. So I think just using your money, mate, strategically, like, money's the thing that I think is one of the biggest things that plays with your mindset. When you're desperate for money, you make silly decisions and you get desperate for business and all the rest of it. Where if you're at a really good place financially, it's much easier to make much more fluid decisions. And that was a massive thing because of Chris Gray. So, mate, that would be one of the big things is be smart with your money for sure.
Fantastic. And the last thing, mate, no topic off limit. You can get to ask me anything you like.
Mate, what got you into social? Because that's the only reason I knew who you were, right? It's social media. What got you into social? Because obviously you've had an exceptional career. You've done, extremely well. Like I'm sure you didn't need to fucking start doing videos on Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of it.
Yeah, mate, it's a really good question. It's a metaphor for why did I first start a database? And when I first got into real estate, Jacko, I was 17 and I did property management, then was in commercial and then residential pretty quickly. And there was no CRMs back then, but there was one which I sort of had to find and purchase overseas. And it's called ACT, by a company called Semantic. It's still around, and it's still the CRM that I actually use today throughout my team. And what I did was recognise that every person I speak to or meet that owns a piece of real estate, I'm just going to put them in this database. I have zero idea what I'm going to do about it, but I'm just going to put them in there. And after about a year or two, it went from a few hundred to a few thousand, and then suddenly technology started to evolve where you could do email blasts, you could do a mail merge where you could print a letter out, you could do SMSs and stuff like that. And then I was like, wow, this is what scale and leverage is all about. Thank God that from day one, I actually started identifying that people that own property was an important part of my business, but not really knowing what to do with it. So when social came out, I was certainly one of the early adopters, Jacko, to be honest. And, I was working in McGrath those days, and McGrath, have certain boundaries or restrictions, if you like. So I was definitely the outlier there, and there was a lot of talk around the boardroom about, Adrian Bo's posting this and that and the other. Nothing nefarious, nothing controversial. It was early days. You're talking sort of around that sort of late 90s, early 2000s. And to be honest, I didn't actually know why, but I knew I had to build a following. And now I look at it, a decade or 2 decades later. And what it allowed me to do when I made the transition from real estate into coaching, even though I'm still involved in real estate, as you know, is I had instant momentum because I had an instant audience. So, after, reigniting my coaching business, only 18 months ago, I'm working with over 100 brands, over 300 offices and over 600 agents. And frankly, I don't think I would have been able to achieve that unless I had that instant audience that was just a phone post or a social media post away from building some attraction and momentum on. So yeah, it was a bit by default and a bit serendipitous, to be honest with you.
Gold. Well, it's definitely working, mate. That's for sure.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Thanks, listeners, for tuning in. Jack, I really appreciate you paying it forward and contributing to the Adrian Bo podcast. I've really enjoyed our conversation. If anyone wants to reach out to you, mate, what's the best way?
Mate, all the socials at Jack C. Henderson. I think I am on Instagram and stuff like that. So
fantastic.
Awesome, you'll see me, mate. Big pink bird.
Yeah, mate, keep up the great work. I love your energy, love your enthusiasm. I love your vision. And, mate, I hope that your business and your life continues to evolve. And the best of luck to you, buddy.
Thanks so much, mate. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Take care.
See you, mate. Bye.